What's up, guys? Barrett. That's right. It's a Tool album review time. So, Tool just came out with a new album called Fear Inoculum. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. You know, Tool have always been the most kind of like extra band. I mean, everything they write, for the most part, is not in 4/4, meaning it's got some kind of weird time signature to it. Now, if you really boil that down, all that really means is that they're playing around with 2s and 3s. So sometimes it'll be like 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3, like in 5, or 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3. And that's the most simple way to get odd times, is to think in 2 or 3. People like to make odd times very confusing. That's because they're confusing themselves. Think of it in 2s and 3s, and it makes it a lot easier. This isn't a video on odd times, though. This is a video on Tool. Now, the new album, it is long, man. It is long. Apparently, it's 90 minutes long. So, the couple of songs that make up the album, the majority of the album, are each, 10 to 15 minutes long. And we'll go through each one of the tracks. But it takes a lot of patience to listen to something like that. Now you say, what do you mean, Barrett? I mean, you love Pink Floyd, and they have some songs that are, a 10-minute long span, like Shining You Crazy Diamond. Well, we'll get into that. One of the biggest differences, I think, is that Tool tries its best, but they don't quite know exactly how to write a 10 to 15 minute song. You can disagree with me all you want, but that's actually a very, very complicated thing to do as a musician. The reason why music is only 3 to 4 minutes long to begin with is because that's as far as, there's something called musical memory. And as you journey down the road of training your ear as a musician, like ear training, you start to really learn what music memory is. Like in college, I remember in one of my ear training classes, the final exam was a classical piece where it had 4 parts, and you had to try to tell each one of those 4 parts apart and put it on the paper. I didn't do well at that at all because, well, let's face it, my strengths have always been drumming and guitar and more of the rhythmic side of things. I'm more of a rhythmic player than I am a melodic guy. I mean, my ear has developed over the years, for sure, but my ear has never been my strongest suit, actually. The point being, it's hard to get someone who's listening to your stuff to listen for that long because our musical memory is not that long. I mean, if you listen to the song a couple of times, that's why you have to listen to songs more than once, because of the idea of musical memory. And, when people are listening to music, they want something to hang on to. In pop and in hip hop, they call it a hook, right? Well, there's no difference in metal, okay? We like to think that metal is that much different. It's really not. Metal has hooks, just like any other music does. And if your song doesn't have a hook, then it comes off as rambling. So let's just get into this. And this is all just my opinion, obviously, but I'm also a guy with a music degree, if that means anything. So track 1 is Fear Inoculum. That was their single from the album, their first single that you heard on the radio. My problem with this song is that it has nothing to hang on to for me. Maybe you could make an argument, I mean, it's 10 minutes long. Maybe you can make an argument that some of the guitar stuff, some of the guitar riffs are something that you can kind of hang on to, but it's mostly just a lot of the same kind of hits and jerks in an odd time signature. It starts out very atmospheric, and then they finally get into it. Now, this album does do a really good job of showing how to build. They obviously, I'm not saying tools are bad, okay? I love Tool, actually. Sorry, I didn't preface this video with that. I love the band Tool. I had the album 10,000 Years, which came out 13 years before this album did, and it left fans, not having an album for 13 years. And I've never been a huge fan of them, but I like their music, and so that's why I listened to this whole entire 90-minute album. And so the first track doesn't do much for me. I'll just put it that way. The second track, Duma, I don't know how to pronounce this shit. Fuma, I think. It's okay. It's 11 minutes. It didn't have a whole lot for me to hang on to either, but I haven't listened to that one that many times. The third track is just an interlude. It doesn't, it's just noise. Let's just be real. I mean, it's just atmospheric, psychological, not psychological. What am I trying to say? Psychedelic. The fourth track, though, Invincible, man, now that song is a beast. You gotta go listen to that song. If you don't listen to the whole 90-minute album, whatever, but listen to that song because that song is intense. It starts out with this beautiful guitar work that could be basically a Bach piece. That's how well it's crafted. The guitar in that song is just killer. The only complaint I have with that song is that it has so many parts. That song I'm talking about is 12 minutes long. Now, that song literally does a thing where you think it's over, and then it has another part. And then you literally think it's over again, and it has another part. It's really in 3 parts, but it's just all considered one thing, one song. And in the middle, all the middles of these songs are just kind of jamming. Like, Tool's like, hey, we're so famous, we're so rich, whatever, let's just jam for part of a song. That's what it sounds like. And jamming is cool, but, it's hard to build a composition you can hang on to around jamming. It just is. So the first part of that song, I love the first part. The middle part's kind of jammy and groovy. And then the last part is kind of the finale of the song. And there's a couple of songs in here that are like that are kind of 3-parters. But Invincible is just one of those where it sounds like it just keeps going on and on and on. And you would be good at the 7-minute mark. I mean, it doesn't need to be 12 minutes. That's kind of the point I'm trying to make here. When you're writing music as a musician, it's not different than any other art. Art needs editing, okay? It's the same reason why painters eventually look at the painting and go, that's good. I'm good. I used to draw before I did music, and at a certain point, you just have to say to yourself, stop adding lines, stop doing this, stop. It's done. It's good. Okay. If you're like movies or film, right? Guess what? You would not want to watch the entire film that they created without the editing. Okay? All the TV shows you ever watch, anyone ever watches, they're all edited. Everything is edited in art. And there's a reason for that. Okay? So I feel like Tool said, screw the editing. We're going to write a whole bunch of stuff. And let's just put it all in there. It's like when you're in a band, which people who have never been in a band before don't quite, you're not used to this kind of thing. But when you're in a band, when you write a song, sometimes you leave certain parts out or you make something better that works better for that part. So then you cut the other stuff. I mean, editing is so important in art. It really is. So, that's really all I have to say about that. The track 5 is just another one of those. I keep thinking psychological. It's not what I mean to say. Psychedelic. Psychedelic. It's very trancey. There's a lot of like trancey stuff in here. I mean, if you're going on a trip, dude, this album is excellent because it's a cruising album. It's one of those. You get in the car, if you're going to drive for a couple hours, man, I wish I would have put this album on when me and my wife were going to go to Mexico, go to our boat, but she was listening to Taylor Swift half the time, so you know how that is. Which the new Taylor Swift album isn't that bad. I had to listen to it a couple of dang times, and Welcome to Be Married. Anyways, track 6, Descending. Now, this is a standout track on this album. So far I really have 2 standout tracks. Invincible, track 4, and Descending, track 6. Dude, this song is pretty sick. I mean, it's just a cool song. It's got a cool sound to it. It's got a good atmosphere to it. It's a cool song, and it is long. It's 13 minutes long, but I like the 13 minutes of that song. It builds beautifully. One complaint I have, or one kind of thing that's interesting that I think, is that Danny Carey in this album, he doesn't play a lot of groove in this album. And I feel like he's doing that on purpose. In other words, instead of playing a groove with the hi-hat, which he's got the coolest kind of hi-hat grooves, he uses the toms and the snare off a lot in this album. And of course, he's Danny Carey. He does the tom thing, okay? I get it. He's famous for all of the tom tribal sound, right? As well as the more metal sound. But I feel like I'm lacking a little bit of just a not straightforward, but groove sound, like, you know, schism. As a drummer, sometimes you just want to hear a nice sounding written groove, and I don't get a whole lot of that from this album, unfortunately. Track 7, Calling Voices. That's a very interesting track. It starts off very chill. I think that's the one that starts off with like the beach sounds and stuff. It's a trip, man. I mean, that one's a trip. It's a very chill song, but it gets into it later on. I like that track. I like track 7 a lot. Track 8 is goofy. It's supposed to be a drum solo, but at the end of the day, it is what it is, man. I would not listen to it for enjoyment, you know. And then track 9, Tempest, seems to be the most popular one out of any one in this album that I've seen from Tool fans, right? It doesn't do much for me. I'm gonna be honest with you. It has more of the older Tool sound. It's way more raw and way more heavy, actually, than a lot of the tracks, except for Invincible. Invincible's pretty heavy. It gets pretty heavy. So Tempest didn't do a whole lot for me. And then the last track, Mocking Beat, it's just a bunch of bird sounds, man. I mean, it's like straight out of some psychedelic 60s, 70s thing. So it's an interesting album, man. I'm not saying don't listen to it, and I'm not saying it's bad. These are just my thoughts on the album. And y'all know me, I do music reviews and anything music, and apparently pool stuff. And so I just figured I would tell you guys my thoughts on this album. So the takeaways I get from it are Invincible, Descending, Calling Voices, and Tempest is okay. It's a decent little tune, I guess. It just didn't do much for me. But Invincible is sick, man. That's a killer song. And then Fear of Inoculum was like the title track. That track really doesn't do anything for me. So, guys, when you have a good hour or more, it's actually longer than an hour, free, and you just want to literally meditate, like this album will just like literally get you sitting there going, whoa, man. It's got a lot of atmosphere to it without any drugs needed. Whenever you're ready to just kind of chill and listen to an album, this is a great one to chill and listen to. Are you going to listen to it again? I don't know. You'll listen to certain tracks again. You probably won't listen to the whole thing again. I've only listened to the whole thing once or twice now, because it is quite a commitment to listen to the whole thing. But cool. I give it about 3.5, 4 stars out of 5. That's just being nice, to be honest with you. I mean, I like it. It's fun. It's fun to listen to. It's different. I mean, it's 2019. We still need some good rock, so I'm just glad Tool's still putting some stuff out, honestly. But yeah, man, thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.